I hope this evening that you have minded the Lord. One more chance. Well, I wanted to take just a moment. It is Pastor Appreciation Month. And I know that I'm on staff, but you know what? The people that minister here also are my pastors also. And I want to take just a moment and say that I truly appreciate our pastors, my pastors, and all that they do. We are so blessed to have the team that we have. And I don't know if you all have had a chance to get to know Pastor Marcos and his wife or not. The more I get to know them, the more I like them. But I'm having a sense that there's more to him than meets the eye. Labor Day picnic, we were out grilling, and Pastor Marcos walked up to me with this pepper they had fried. And he says, "Oh, Pastor, you need to try." And I said, "Now, I don't like hot stuff." He says, "It's not hot." I don't know if there's a breakdown in our English or if he's a little bit of a stinker. But when I went to go put the thing in my mouth, he said, "Stop, don't put it all in your mouth." But the longer I get to know the Garcias, they are wonderful people. And it speaks very highly as when we were kind of looking for someone and you find that you found someone and everyone else wanted them too. That's a good sign. And they have been such a wonderful addition. Josh and Jody, Emery, are they here tonight? Their sickness. Well, you know, Josh and Jody is such a blessing, and I appreciate their ministry to our youth and to our teens. You know, the thing with Josh and Jody is they really make my wife and I feel old. I can remember when Jody's mama was expecting her. Now, I was just a kid myself, a little kid. And my wife has a picture somewhere around where the Emery boys were sitting on her lap at camp. So that tells you how old we are and how young they are. But I appreciate the Emerys, their dedication to our young people, and not just our young people, but they're the type of people that like to include people and love people and reach out to them. And church, we need people like that. When you talk about glue, Jody Emery is just one of those persons that will make you sticky all over. And so I appreciate them. The Ratcliffes, my goodness, what could be said about the Ratcliffes? The minister team have never been the same since they've arrived. You want to talk about energy? There's energy right there with Brother Ratcliffe, and we appreciate you, Brother Ratcliffe. The energy, your exuberance to always be right there, and we appreciate that. And Sister Ratcliffe's talent on the piano and music, we truly appreciate that. And the Frys. Oh, my goodness. Sister Fry, so smart, so intelligent, so caring. A wonderful, wonderful pastor's wife. Amen. Thank you, Sister Fry, for all that you do. Also, along with that is the sacrifice that she makes for us as a church. Right. So thank you, Sister Fry, sharing your husband with us so much and sacrificing. Brother Fry, wow, this was a man that I really did not know when I said yes to him. I did not know him as much as I have got to know him the last 3.5, 4 years. And I have found that he has a heart that many people do not see. And a heart of compassion and love for you as a church. Amen. We have laughed together and we have cried together. And it has been my privilege to call you a friend, Pastor Fry, my pastor. And there's one more person that I have to say thank you to. And that is to the strength. And that is my wife. She is an integral part of my ministry and who I am. And so she, you know, I wish I could say she is the brains and I am the bronze, but y'all know that's not true. She is the brains, but I'm not the bronze. I wish I could say she's the beauty, but I'm more like the beast. She makes me who I am, and oftentimes I'm the face up front, but she is the heart that keeps us beating behind. And so I appreciate her ministry, and wouldn't be who I was if it wasn't for my wife. Now, you can blame me for the mistakes, but she is all the good things about me. So thank you to our pastoral teams. You are my pastors, and I truly appreciate you all and all that you do and minister to me. It takes a lot. It takes an entire team to be able to minister to me. So, well, if you have your Bibles this evening, I'm going to be reading, or we're going to be looking at a very, very unique story. I love studying the Bible because so oftentimes we focus on these stories in the Bible that we're all familiar with. We love. About a couple of weeks ago, I was in Michigan, and I preached there on David and Goliath, and I love the story, and I love Jonah and the well, and I love to hear those Moses and the bulrush and the burning bush and all those stories. They're important. But so oftentimes there are stories that we skim by and hurry by. And every once in a while, Brother Klein, God stops us in our track and he shows us something so fresh, so new. And maybe to you all it won't be fresh and new, but to me this week, God has opened my eyes to another story. It is a story in 2 Kings chapter 6. It's a story of a king called King Aram. And he is at war with the children of Israel. And somehow it seems that the children of Israel is always one step ahead of King Aram. Whenever he tries to get a battle plan to defeat the children of Israel, they are already one step ahead and have moved and been able to react. It has robbed them of their chance for what they call the element of surprise. Y'all like the element of surprise? I love the element of surprise. I love the element of surprise, especially with my boys. I like to get downstairs at night. Recently, I won't tell you which one, but his initials are Connor, the oldest. And I heard him say something about going downstairs, and I thought, I'm going to get the element of surprise. And I hid downstairs. It was just enough dark that as he came downstairs, I went, "Roar!" The kid jumped straight up in the air and landed like a cat on all fours. The element of surprise. Now, the element of surprise is not always easy in my household. Yeah, it's not always easy in my household. You know, when you want to try to keep a secret, and it's not always the kids. A few years ago, my wife, she decided that she was going to get me a gift. And we're driving down the highway, and all of a sudden she says, and she said it, when your desk arrives, blah, 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 blah. And I went, what? Never mind. Then there was a couple of years ago, the element of surprise was lost too. She decided that she was going to get me a grill for Father's Day. She had asked Brother Fulton to assemble it and surprise me when I got home. We were about 30 minutes from home. And one of the kids says, "Daddy, do you like the grill?" "Yeah, I like the grill." Good. Can't tell you why. It loses the element of surprise. The element of surprise was important to King Abraham. If he was going to defeat the children of Israel, he had to have the element of surprise. And somehow something was happening to take away that element of surprise. So he called all of his men into him and he said, "Fellas, who here is for the king of Israel?" I think what he was saying is, all right, who's the rat? among us? Who's telling our secrets? The interesting thing of this story was that his men already knew what the secret was. And they said, "Oh, king, we'll tell you, it's not us." But they have a man by the name of Elisha. He has a source, and he's able to know exactly what is going to happen. So the king thought, if I'm going to get the element of surprise, I've got to get rid of what's taking it away. So he sent all of his army to go capture Elisha. That morning, Elisha's servant got up and was doing all that he was supposed to do as a servant. And the Bible says that he went to the window and he looked out. And he saw that Elisha's home was filled, the mountains were filled with the armies of Aram. And the servant cried out, "Alas, my master, how shall we do?" That sounds like a strange mouthful. So I thought I would interpret that for you this evening, okay? His words were in the Bible, "Alas, my master, how shall we do?" Modern, it goes, "Ah! We're doomed. We're going to die. What are we going to do?" And this brings me to my point. In verse 16, we read these words, and this is Elisha answering. And he answered, "Fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them." And in verse 17, this is what I would like us to focus on. And Elisha prayed and said, "Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes that he may see." Wow. Lord, open his eyes that he could see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man. And what did he see? And he saw and beheld the mountains were full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. Elisha's servant initially was not able to see what God wanted and was willing to do. All that servant could see was his enemies. All that he could imagine was his own mortality. All he could sense was his own danger and the harm that was coming to him. And so often in our own personal lives, friends, we pull back the curtains of life and we see the enemies surrounding us, all around us. And what do we want to do? We want to panic. We become overwhelmed, we feel desperation, and we feel hopelessness. But our prayer should be, "Oh Lord, open our eyes that we can see." You see, there's three things that I notice about Elisha's servant he was blinded to. Three things. He was blinded to God's presence. He was blinded to God's protection. And he was blinded to God's provisions. And this evening, I just want to take just a moment. It's not going to be real long, but I want to look at those three things. You know, we need to be praying, and we need to pray that Lord will open our eyes to God's presence. Amen. Now, we are a people that believe that God is everywhere, right? Sure. Do we believe that God is everywhere? Amen. I mean, there's not a single place that I can go that God is not there, right? Amen. Some of y'all are asleep. Some of y'all are yawning and getting ready to take your evening nap. But God is everywhere, and there is not a single place that I can go that God is not there. I love to take our kids, and I like to say, kids, if I would go to the moon, is God there? And the kids will say, yeah. I said, if I go to the middle of the earth, in the deepest cave that there is God there? Yeah. If I go out into the middle of the ocean, is God there? He's there. God is everywhere. In Psalms 139, one of my favorite Psalms, we read these words, where shall I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend up to the heavens, you are there. And if I make my bed in hell, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. God is right there wherever I am. Can I tell you something? God's right where you are this evening. He knows exactly where you are. You may not feel him this evening. You may not see God this evening. You may not hear him this evening. But can I tell you something? Wherever you are, whatever you're facing this evening, God is there. Amen. Jonah tried to run from God. Did that work? No. There is not a trial too dark or a problem too dark, wherever you may be this evening, that God is not right there. Amen. God was right there in the midst of Elisha. You know, God is always there. I was thinking it's kind of like a lens on a camera, or a telescope, or a microscope. And microscope would be more like something I'm used to. But, you know, God was always there. But sometimes we just need to take that lens and to bring it more in focus and to see that he's there. But when you focus the lens, you'll see him a whole lot more clearly. Right. And as I was preparing for the sermon, I read the following. The important thing is that we need to sharpen our focus on God. Not just in the special one-off moments of our life, but in our everyday life. Amen. Are you focusing on God every day? Trying to see him and to find him? And this writer said, and just think how that might change us. Would we be so quick to sin if we knew God was right there with me? Right. Would we be so quick to talk about others or gossip behind others' backs if we realized that God was standing right here? Would we be willing to watch or to listen or to go to some places if we realized that God was right there? If we really realize that God is right here with us, and when we realize that, we sense God close to us, it's much easier to do what he asks us to do, to show the love and compassion we're to show, to look and act like Christ, and to be sticky, just like Christ wants us to be sticky, Brother Joey. It's a whole lot easier when we see his presence. You know, we need to ask God, help us, Lord. Help us to see your presence. Open our eyes, Lord, to your presence more. Seeing God also gives to us boldness and courage to grow and move forward in God's plans for our life. You know, that servant could not see God's presence. Did it change it, Brother Fulton? Was God there? He was there. He was right there. And this evening, you may not be able to see God in the situations that you're facing this evening. But can I tell you something? God is there. Lord, open our eyes to see your presence. But not only should we ask God to open our eyes to see his presence, but open our eyes to God's protection. There's an interesting animal in South and Central America. I'd never heard of this until I was studying. They say that there is an animal is a minnow-like fish called four eyes in Central and South America that likes to swim or skim the water, with part of its eyes above water and part of its eyes below the water. Isn't that cool? They say it has something like bifocals, and I sure hope that that fish has better bifocals than me, because mine don't help. But they say it can watch for danger and also take in its nutrients. And how often is it that we also need to somehow get our eyes on Jesus? But somehow, friends, in the world that we live in, we also have to be cautious and keep our eyes on what is happening in the world around us. I'm reminded of that song we sang, Sister Dershite's back there. I'm sure she would remember this song. Sister Taylor used to teach us, and Sister Janice, well, I didn't look down and I didn't look around. I just looked up, up, up. Did y'all ever sing that song? Well, he didn't look down in the deep despair and he didn't look around in the world of care. He just looked up and God was with him there. You know, we need to look up, for our help comes from the Lord. Psalms 34:7 says, the angels of the Lord camps around those who fear him and delivers them. Isaiah 43 says, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers they shall not overflow you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flames scorch you. Why? For I am the Lord your God. Friend, he has promised that he would be with us and give us exactly. He will be our protection. Lord, open our eyes to see that you are our protection. Amen. I was thinking just a couple of weeks ago, my wife and I and our boys traveled out to Pennsylvania. I don't know if you all have ever been out there to Lebanon, Pennsylvania, to the God's Missionary Church. If you've been to the bus and outreach, you have. You know that you go like this up a mountain, and then you go like that. And you go like that, and then you go like that. But it doesn't just go like this. It goes like this. And after we had driven 12 hours out to Lebanon, Pennsylvania, we got there on Friday night. We were supposed to be speaking on Saturday night. I thought I'd noticed something, that my car was acting a little funny. You all that know me know that I know much about cars. But I could sense something wasn't right with the car. But I thought, well, maybe it's just I've driven on that Pennsylvania Turnpike for so long that I'm just shaken. And we got up the next morning and we drove over to Hershey, Pennsylvania, and I said, there's something wrong with my car, because my steering wheel was going like this and it never done that before. And I said, Connor, when we get there, I want us to get out and check the tires, front tires. Something is wrong. We have a 12-hour trip back over those mountains. We got out and we looked at the tires, Brother Reed, and I could not see a single thing wrong with the tires. And I thought, well, maybe it's the air pressure. Maybe it's greater in one and not in the other. We'll check the air pressure. Check the air pressure. Everything was fine. That evening we were to speak the event was to start at 5 o'clock. At 4:10 we arrived at the event. That's 50 minutes, folks. Okay. We were going to be speaking that night, get up the next morning, do children's service and drive straight home. Leave Sunday, drive all night, get home Monday morning. I was flying out Tuesday. I had no room for any problems in my life. When I got out of the car at 4:10, I looked down at my tires, and what I could not see earlier, I now clearly saw. And the rubber on my tire had begun to split. I know a little bit about tires. When they split, they don't last long. And mountains and me with tires like that is not good. And I turned to my wife and she says, get new ones now. I jumped in the car and drove across Lebanon, not knowing where I was going, but I'm going somewhere to find tires. 50 minutes before our service, I found a place. It was now 20 after. They said, we will take 30 minutes to get your car before we can get it back. My phone had 12% charge. I called my wife and said, I'm at Firestone. What do I do? Get new tires. I'm sending someone to get you. I hung up from her and I walked in and I looked at the other front tire, Brother Campbell, and the other one was also splitting. And I thought to myself, God, you are my protector and my help. Why is it sometimes we question the good Lord when He has always been there for us? He is my protector. And I thought as we drove home over those mountains and we hit some horrible storms, we saw accidents happen right in front of us. And I kept thinking to myself, God, you are good to me. I look at what could have been, and I see how good God is and how He is my protector. Time and time and time and time again. And He's our protector. Lord, open our eyes that we can see that you are our protector. Thirdly, we must ask God to open our eyes to His provision. Here in 2 Kings, God's provision, it was God's deliverance. God regularly provides in this way. It's a truth that runs like a thread, or maybe we should say like a rope, throughout the entire Bible. I have never seen the righteous forsaken. I have seen saints walk through the trials, through the troubles, through the test, but I have never seen God forsake His own. Maybe y'all have never experienced that, but I've never seen God forsake me, but He's always provided for me. Amen. Again, going back to our travels, a couple years ago, money was tight. And we had all these vacation Bible schools. And if you all know, vacation Bible schools and VBSs are not a cheap thing to do. And my wife looked at me and says, honey, I don't know how we're going to do this. The money's just not there. But we started out and we traveled. And at the end of the year, she looked at me and she said, how did it happen? God, with the amount that we had, we should have never been able to do. But God just took it and He took care of every single thing. God always provides. He always takes care of us. Amen. Lord, open my eyes that I can see your provision, that you have never failed, you have never disappointed. In conclusion, I want to share this story with you. It was told by a missionary who was a medical doctor in Africa. He was home doing deputational work in the state of Michigan. And he was sharing with the church one night that while I was serving at a small field hospital in Africa, every 2 weeks I traveled by bicycle through the jungle to a nearby city for supplies. This was a journey of 2 days and required camping overnight in the jungle at the halfway point. He said, on one of these journeys, I arrived in the city where I planned to collect money from a bank, purchase the medicine and supplies, and then begin my 2-day journey back to the field hospital. He said, but upon arriving in the city, I observed 2 men fighting, one of whom had been seriously injured. He said, I treated him for his injuries and at the same time talked to him about the Lord Jesus Christ. And then I traveled 2 days, camping overnight, and arrived home without incident. 2 weeks later, he said, I repeated my journey. And upon arriving in that city again, I was approached by the young man I had treated. He told me that he had known that I had money and medicines. He said, some of my friends and I followed you into the jungle that night, knowing you would camp overnight. We planned to kill you and to take your money and your medicines. But he said, just as we were about to move into your camp, we saw that you were surrounded by 26 armed guards. The missionary said at that time, I laughed and said, I am certain. I was all alone in that jungle campsite. And the young man, he pressed on and said, no, sir, I was not the only person to see the guards. My 5 friends also saw them, and we all counted them, and it was because of these guards that we were afraid, and we left you alone that night. At this point, the missionary was interrupted in the service that he was setting in by a man that was in the crowd. He jumped to his feet. And he interrupted the missionary and said, "Could you tell me what day this happened?" The missionary could easily recall. How could you forget an event like this? And he told the man of the date, and the man told that story. That on the night of your incident in Africa, it was morning here in America. And as I was preparing to go play golf, I was about to putt when I felt the urge to pray for you. In fact, the urging of the Lord would not stop and was so intense that I called several of the men in our church and I asked them to join me at the church to pray for you. The man said, "We prayed." And he turned and he looked at the crowd and he said, "I'd like for those that join me to please stand up." And the missionary said, "I didn't care who they were, but I couldn't help but count 26 men who had prayed for me." Lord, open my eyes that I can see. Lord, open my eyes that I can see your presence. Lord, open my eyes that I can see your power. Lord, open my eyes that I can see your provision. Friend, wherever you are this evening, whatever you're going through this evening, fear not. For they that be with us are more than they that be with them. Right. Brother Campbell, I know you're recovering, but could you start us on that chorus? There's more with us than be with them. More with us than be with them. We're on the winning side with banners unfurled.